Welcome to Tech Talk. My name is Matt Knight, and I am the Facilities and Training Coordinator for Access Humboldt. And I'm here today with Juan Carrillo, who's our Production Manager. Hey, Juan.
Hi.
And we are doing our first inaugural video version of Tech Talk. It's been a radio version so far, but dealing with the COVID-19 situation, we're practicing social distancing, and we're also doing a practical demonstration of what a lot of you folks are going to be doing and have been asking us how to do, which is, since we're not allowed to gather for lectures, performances, personal enrichment classes, and other sorts of events, you'll be using a platform like this, which is Skype. There are other ones, Zoom, Google Hangouts, Facebook Live, but I think this is way people are going to be holding events for the foreseeable future, and we just wanted to go and give some very, very basic information about what you need to get started doing these kinds of events using these kinds of platforms. And I think maybe the first thing we could do, Juan, is just talk about some of the platforms that are available for people to use.
Okay, yeah. So the team at Access Humboldt has actually been compiling a list of platforms that are, easy to use and free to a little more complicated and paid. So I believe from a conversation earlier that we had today at the office, we're going to try to put those resources online on our website here in the next week or two. But I think, Matt, which platform would you like to start to discuss first?
Well, why don't we start off with Skype, because that's where we are right now. We're holding our meeting and video right here on Skype. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then we can move on to some of the other ones.
Okay. So for Skype, we are right now we're just doing a two-person Skype call, but I believe it scales up quite a bit. I'm not sure of the number, but it's more than 8 people, I think. It might be actually more like a dozen. And it's available on all major operating systems. So Windows, obviously, Mac, and then there should be an Android and an iOS app for cell phones and tablets. And it's all free. You can just download the app and then register an account with an email. You can use a previous email that you have already, or you can create a new Microsoft account to download and install the software. Once the software's up and running, there's a couple of configuration things you will have to do, and this is going to be across the board for all of the applications that you use, which is you're going to have to give it access to your microphone, and you're going to have to give it access to your camera if you want to use a camera. At the very least, you'll want to have a microphone so that you can have a voice call and you can call in. If possible, use a camera if you're comfortable with that. And so that's what we're doing right now is we're using our microphones and cameras. Secondary thing would be, or third thing you might want to do is also have a pair of headphones available just to minimize any kind of echoing that might happen from the microphone picking up the speakers. This usually provides the best results.
We'll move into that in a minute, but let's just quickly run over the platforms available, and I will put some links down here below so you guys can find a link to them. So Skype, there's Skype. Another popular platform that's become very popular in the last few week or so is Zoom. And so what are the benefits of using that as opposed to maybe Skype?
So Zoom has become really popular in more office environments. So it's a little more structured, and I believe it has more tools for you to do more like group presentations. It's got a whiteboard feature. I'm not super familiar with Zoom. I'm just getting to know it. But I think the reason it's become so popular is because it's very easy to send someone a link and have them join a meeting without having to install any large piece of software. You might have to install a plugin for your browser, but that all happens really quickly, and you don't need to sign up for an account if you don't want to. As long as you get that invitation, you can get up and running fairly quickly into the meeting and participate. And so I believe the free account, if you're trying to host a meeting, you're limited to 40 minutes as a host. And then after that, if you're having longer meetings, then you do need to pay for one of their tiers. I'm not sure on the pricing. You'll have to look up the pricing. But if you're just participating, say you get an invite, you don't have to worry about any of that. You just log in and you're up and running.
Is there like a limitation to the amount of people that can participate in a Zoom meeting?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what those numbers are. I know that currently most platforms, we're talking probably more than a dozen people at a time, with the one exception being Google Meetings. I think we were capped. It might have been like 8 people or something, but yeah, most of these meetings or most of these platforms support fairly large groups. So it just kind of depends on what you're trying to do. And I think the platforms that we're talking about right now are mostly to have a group of people join in into like one meeting room. We're not talking about like Facebook Live, where you would just publish out to like everyone in your list and anyone could find that, by searching it. This is all like kind of like by invite. You'll have to send someone an invitation for them to join.
Well, you mentioned Google, and so is Google Meetings different than Google Hangouts, and would you prefer?
Yeah. So Google, like the Google services right now are a little bit, it's a little bit weird because they've been kind of evolving. They're ever evolving. It started out as Hangouts, and then they were, you can do like YouTube Live and stuff like that. So Google Hangouts and YouTube are kind of like based on the same platform, kind of. Okay. But then Hangouts kind of got phased out, and now it's called Google Meetings. It still offers some of the same features that Google Hangouts used to have. And we just started looking into this again last week, so we're not super familiar with it yet. But what we did notice was that the quality was a little bit lower resolution than Skype or Zoom. And then also it was not as feature rich. So there was, it didn't have like a whiteboard feature that we could find. It seemed just a little more limited, but it was pretty easy to get up and running as long as you had a Google account, like a Gmail account. Like you can start that going right away.
All right.
Again,
I was going to say I heard you mention YouTube Live. And
yeah. So YouTube,
a platform that maybe more people are familiar with or have used in the past.
Yeah. So YouTube Live, similar to Facebook Live, is just gives you the ability to broadcast to the masses. So you don't really need to invite anyone. It's available via search within YouTube's search engine. People can find it. You can still send out the link for people so they can find it easier, but anyone can essentially look up that stream and tune in. And so those are really good for public events, public meetings, and instructional stuff. You want to do instructional stuff, like just to the general public. The only thing you really have to worry about when you're doing those type of live events on YouTube and Facebook and even like Instagram is copyright violations. Right. So that's going to be mostly music. If you have copywritten music, you have to be really careful because their algorithms will detect that, and then they'll pull your stream down, and then usually they penalize you if it's your first time offense. I think they just kind of stop your stream and they give you a warning, and then after that they might give you a ban for a few days, and then if you keep doing it, then you could get banned permanently from the platform. So you have to be really careful about that, and kind of be up to date with like your understanding of copyright law in wherever you're streaming from. And you will see a lot of people right now are streaming, and I know a lot of DJs that are streaming right now, and it's kind of it's hit or miss. Some of them are getting pulled like immediately, and some are playing music for half an hour to an hour, and then they might get pulled, and some aren't getting pulled at all. It's kind of a really weird time right now. But if I were you, I would just kind of keep that in mind.
Sure. And of course, this kind of platform, and you also mentioned Facebook Live, would probably be good for like if you expect maybe a mass audience and a non-interactive audience, let's say, where you're doing a lecture or non-copywritten music performance of some sort, and you might
Yes.
have 50 people watching. So it seems like what you're saying is that this would be the optimal platform for something that you're broadcasting as opposed to narrowcasting interactively.
Yeah. There is some interaction that you could do on Facebook and even on YouTube, but it's limited. It's more, comment based. Like people
Yeah,
can leave a
chat,
comment. Yeah,
isn't it?
correct. Yeah, it's a chat feature, correct. So it's not the same, of course, as if you had other people actually joining in on the conversation. But yeah, so every platform kind of has its usage, and as long as you're kind of aware of its limitations, I think it could be very successful in being able to provide content for your viewers or connecting people for work. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about internet connection and what sort of connection that you might need to do something.
So your upload speed is what you're going to want to look at for when you're broadcasting out or when you're trying to do a live stream or host a meeting. That's really the metric that you want to take a look at. Most residential, I think, if you're like on Sunlink Altice around here, it's going to be about 8 meg up, and that should be plenty to do an HD stream. As long as you don't have a lot of other devices on your network taking up that bandwidth, you should probably be okay. Most platforms will kind of dynamically throttle your or dynamically change your resolution depending on the bandwidth that you have. If you don't have a lot of bandwidth, you'll notice right away, like you'll be really pixelated. Our connection right now looks pretty good, in real time. We're recording this via the recording feature, so we'll see what it looks like in the recording. But for us right now, it looks pretty good and really steady. And I'm here at my house. I have 8 meg up, and then the download speed is not as crucial. You know, I think I have 8 meg up and 100 down, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. If you have anything lower than that, so if you're on a cell network, that'll be more challenging for sure. You can run some speed tests on the location where you're at and see what kind of speeds you're going to get. Verizon has been really dodgy in this area, so if you're on Verizon, you might kind of be in places that have like 1 meg, 2 meg, and that's going to be a pretty big bottleneck. At a minimum, you probably want about 4 megs. You know.
And so folks might test their network. You mentioned speed test, and that,
Yeah. So you can.
I'll put a link down here. But for people who are listening on the radio, you could just Google speed test, and that's something that will show you what you're currently running at.
Yeah. So if you're on a laptop, just Google speed test, and there's a couple of speed test sites that show up, and it just runs a really simple process of like downloading some data and then pushing out data, and it kind of gives you a metric of how fast the connection is either way. If you're on a smartphone or a tablet, you can go to one of the app stores and just pull down one of the speed test apps. Most of them are free, or if not, just you should be able to run it also off of the mobile browser, so you can get an idea of what kind of speeds you're looking at. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, here in Humboldt, unfortunately, our cell networks are not well. They're robust, but they're just not as fast because of especially now that a lot of us are working remotely. The capacity is just getting hammered, so you might see some chokes here and there.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the hardware that folks might be using and what's going to be optimal. Most cameras or computers, laptops have their own microphone. They have their own camera, but is that going to be adequate? And I guess it's going to depend on what you're trying to capture, but what do you think about that?
Well, it's gonna, I would say it's adequate if that's all if that's all you have, right? I mean, at the bare minimum, most of us probably have a device that will have a camera and will have a microphone and will allow us to hop on for a meeting if we need to. Now, if we're just on the consuming end, we just need to be able to have a screen and an internet connection to be able to view that stream. And if we're participating, then yeah, we need a microphone and camera. So most modern cell phones are going to have both of those devices embedded in them. If you're on modern laptop, more than likely you're going to have a webcam embedded, somewhere on the chassis of the laptop, and microphone array somewhere on there as well. If you want to go a little further up, if you have, and you might already have some of this stuff lying around, you might have, so you have this webcam, which
Logitech webcam. We're using a slightly different model on this computer, but this would be something that you could use to, if you wanted to put it on a tripod or put it on the back of a chair or something like that, or some appliance, so you could get away from your computer because you might be difficult maneuvering a computer screen.
Yes.
You could go something like this.
Yeah. And it looks like maybe it wasn't capturing it because we have this blurred background thing filter going on. So if you put it right put it right in front of your face. There you go. So yeah, but any basic webcam like that will kind of more than likely make your image look better. Just most of the webcams that are embedded in laptops or desktops usually are not that great. But third-party webcams can range anywhere between $20 to like $100. So you just have to kind of find a budget that you're comfortable with and read some reviews. But we've been using Logitech cameras for years now, and they look pretty good. Like that camera that I think both of these models that we're both using right now, we've had these cameras for like 5 years, and they still look really good.
Yeah. The thing that I can think of is, like, if, let's say, for example, and I've been asked this question a couple times about people wanting to do musical performances, and I can see where if you put up your Marshall stack or what have you and started playing guitar, where the microphone on your computer would get overwhelmed pretty quickly.
Yes.
So what can you say about interface devices?
Yeah. So if you're going to be plugging in microphones or instruments, it would benefit you to plug in exactly an interface, an audio interface like the one that you're holding up right now. That's a Zoom U44. And that one has combo jacks on it, so you can plug in XLR or quarter inch, maybe even RCA. No, all the RCAs are out on that one. But yeah, and then it has a USB connection that goes to the computer, and so then you can send a mix from that board into whatever software that you're using, whatever platform. You just have to tell it, to select the Zoom device instead of your onboard microphone, and that
and here's the Apogee Jam.
Yeah.
Which is basically gives you a quarter inch input and a USB output that you would put into your computer if you say want to plug a guitar into, or maybe some sort of other audio device.
Yeah.
It's a little gain control here on the side. So
both of those devices are also cross-platform, so you can plug those into a Mac or PC, and also plug them into an iOS device using USB adapter. So.
Yeah. And then the other thing I might just want to mention briefly are USB microphones. I'm holding up a Blue Yeti microphone. Very versatile microphone. Sounds really good. has a USB plug-in on the bottom and a headphone out, uh, and can really do a lot of stuff. But I mean, even a simple USB microphone, stick microphone like this Audio Technica right here has the USB plug-in. Could be something, and a headphone out. Could be something that would give you a little bit better quality than your onboard computer microphone.
Yeah, both of those are going to be a huge jump in audio quality right there. And it'll allow you to do the audio monitoring through the microphone itself into the headphones, which gives you latency-free, lag-free monitoring. So I would say if you have those devices, or if you're looking to purchase those devices, they're really good. We've been using those for a long time as well. Another option which you might be you might have lying around is just the earbuds that came with your headphones. These have these are headphones, and then they have an embedded microphone. Typically, this might give you a little bit better quality than just the microphone array that's on your computer, just because the microphone's going to be closer to your mouth. That in and of itself will give you better quality.
Good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, we've talked about live, sending things out live to people, but it would be great if you captured that, whatever it might be, performance lecture, distance learning, by recording it. And of course, then you could share it with, through various platforms like YouTube or archive.org, or you could send it to us here at Access Humboldt, and we could put it on television. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but maybe you could just say something a little something about recording this stuff.
Yeah. So if we're let's talk about first the meeting platforms. All of the meeting platforms right now have a recording function in the actual platform itself, and what it does is that it records it in the cloud, but you do have to enable the recording. You can't ask for the recording after the fact if you did not enable the recording. So in Skype, for example, this is what we're doing right now. We enabled the recording right before we started our conversation, and then afterwards it's going to provide a link for us to download our conversation. Now from our understanding of it is that it looks slightly different from what you're seeing in real time. So we're going to end up with a file that's going to have both of our windows, I think, side by side. Yeah. And so it does look a little bit different. I'm not familiar with what Zoom outputs, but we just looked it up earlier today, and Zoom also has a recording function. You just have to enable it. You'll have to look up each platform's settings to find out how to set that up. But they do offer recording functions. YouTube and Facebook, they also provide a recording automatically. So whatever you broadcast it's automatically recording, and it's being then it gets saved to your profile. So it's kind of like a live DVR, and then people can play that back, after your broadcast is over.
Yeah. And, you mentioned earlier about enabling your microphones and cameras. The computer will probably prompt you to do that.
Yeah.
We had a situation last week where we were trying to do a meeting. I just wanted to mention that some of these onboard cameras have a physical lens cap on them, something that we didn't realize. We tried all the high-tech solutions, and the lowest low-tech solution was just actually opening up the little slider on the camera. So if you're not getting a camera and it seems like you should be, it could be that it's just being blocked somehow. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because we had that experience, and we're the experts supposedly, and we didn't even think of that. So
yeah, that was interesting, and yeah, absolutely. Make sure that you check your hardware, make sure that it doesn't have a privacy slider or a privacy function that might disable the camera from actually engaging with the operating system or with any of the applications. So yeah, check your privacy settings. Make sure you're allowing access to the microphone and camera. If you're going to do video, make sure that you have any other privacy functions in the hardware disabled as well.
Right. And then finally, let's just talk a little bit about the use of available light and framing I mean, obviously we can't give a tutorial on that, although there are plenty of them. If you wanted to go online for any of this stuff, there's YouTube is a wealth of information for any of these platforms. But we should talk a little bit about making sure that you have the right kind of light coming in the right sort of direction, and also what you're going to be seeing on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right. Let's see here. So let's kind of analyze both of our frames a little bit, just so we can kind of break it down. But let's start with yours. So you are you're actually really well lit, very evenly lit. And there's a reason for that. The reason is because you placed the light right in front, right off outside frame. So why don't you go ahead and turn off that light?
Well, I'd have to go out to the studio to do that.
Oh, okay, never mind.
It's outside the control room window.
But if you did turn off the light, then then two things will happen. One, you would then get pretty dim, and then to compensate, your camera more than likely is going to bring up the gain, and your image quality is going to get reduced just because it's going to get really noisy. So it is really important to use the available light if you have it, such as lamps, or a window. A window tends to be a pretty good light source. That's kind of indirect light. And two,
the thing about windows is you want to make sure that it's not behind you.
Yeah, because then you get backlit.
Yeah.
So then your camera is going to want to expose for the window, and so then you end up getting pretty dark. There is a utility that you can use to kind of help with that. It's called it might be called different for Windows and Macs, but I use one called Webcam Settings. I just download this small app, and it allows me to lock the exposure and unlock the focus. So those are two things, and the white balance, and that way it's not changing. The white balance more than likely is not going to change unless you're in front of a window and it's a cloudy day, or there's an overcast day where the light's kind of popping in and out. For the most part, the white balance is not going to be too bad as far as like adjusting itself. But the zoom, the focus and the exposure might. Depending on how close or far away you get from the camera, it'll kind of change exposure and change the focus. So mine is completely locked right now. But Matt's, I noticed that yours is not. So if you pull back a little bit, and go forward. Actually, yours did a pretty good job. Earlier when you held something up, I saw it kind of hunt for focus a little bit. But yeah, so those are some things that you might want to consider locking, and you can just download a utility. Logitech has its own free utility on Windows that you can just download, and then you can select your camera and lock all those down. And then lighting, I do have for me, I have a couple of lights here in my office that if I were to turn those off, with my settings being locked, you will see that I just got darker. This is like a light strip that's in front of me. Right. And then just framing. You don't want to give yourself too much headroom, so that you're, like this.
Yes.
So just kind of frame yourself so that it's kind of aesthetically pleasing. So you're not cutting your head off. And yeah, I think those are the two biggest things. It's just you're considering your lighting and your framing.
Okay. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think for the first one, I think this is good.
Okay. And I just wanted to say that if you have specific questions, or if you have a topic for a future Tech Talk about this or any other subject having to do with this kind of thing, you can contact us by phone at 476-1798. You can also get us at info@accesshumboldt.net. And when you do record an event, be sure to send it to us if it's appropriate, if you think that other people could benefit by seeing what it is that you've done. You can go to our website, accesshumboldt.net, follow the Create tab, and then look for the content submission page. And you can fill out a request for playback form and give us a link, or submit electronically using Google Drive or Dropbox or one of those services. And we'll put what your TV show, I guess, essentially on television. So, all right, well, I think that's going to do it for this one. We covered a lot of ground. And Juan, thanks for doing this. And thanks for watching and for listening, because you guys are out there on the radio. Please stay safe, and of course, stay 6 feet apart.
Thank you.
We'll see you.